The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and ancient stone, a welcoming embrace Lena hadn't realized she'd been longing for. She stood on the threshold of her new life, a small two-story building that had once been a fisherman's cottage, now painstakingly restored, its windows gleaming with the promise of stories yet unread. Seabrook Cove clung to the rugged Cornish coast like a cluster of barnacles, ancient and unyielding, yet filled with a gentle warmth she'd felt from the moment her tires crunched on its cobbled main street. The shop, which would soon be Fable and Fern, was her refuge, her dream made manifest after years of chasing deadlines and fluorescent lights in a city that had slowly, subtly drained her color. Here, surrounded by the quiet murmur of the ocean and the rustle of leaves, she hoped to rediscover the vibrant hues of her own soul. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of old wood, and the fresh paint she'd applied herself, a pale sage green that brought the outdoors in. Unpacked boxes of books lined the walls, a treasure trove waiting to be shelved. Each box represented a piece of her heart, carefully curated titles she'd loved, authors she admired, stories she believed deserved to be shared. There were children's books with whimsical illustrations, dog-eared classics, modern literary gems, and even a small section dedicated to local history and folklore. Lena ran a hand over the smooth oak counter she'd bought from an antique dealer in the next town over, its surface worn soft by generations of use. It felt right. Solid and enduring, just like the life she intended to build here. She had moved with a certain quiet determination, leaving behind a relationship that had fizzled into comfortable silence and a job that had become a gilded cage. She wasn't running from anything, not truly, but rather running in towards something, a slower pace, a deeper connection to nature, and the simple joy of sharing her passion. The first week in Seabrook Cove was a flurry of activity and quiet discovery. Days were spent unpacking, arranging shelves, and wrestling with a particularly stubborn window latch that refused to cooperate. Evenings were for exploring. She'd walk along the winding paths that hugged the cliff edge, the wind whipping strands of her dark auburn hair around her face, the vast expanse of the Atlantic stretching out before her like an ever-changing canvas. The lighthouse, a sturdy sentinel on the furthest promontory, blinked its comforting rhythm each night, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. She'd met a few of the locals already. Mrs. Gable, who ran the bakery 2 doors down, had greeted her with a warm smile and a plate of still-warm apple scones, her eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine welcome. "Any problems, dear? You just holler," she'd said, her voice like the comforting clatter of teacups. Then there was Finn, the young man who delivered the morning papers, always with a cheeky grin and a wave, his bright blue eyes taking in everything. The town was small enough that news traveled swiftly, and Lena could feel the gentle curiosity of its inhabitants, a quiet hum beneath the surface. One sunny afternoon, while attempting to reattach a particularly ornate antique sign above her shop door, a hand-carved piece depicting an open book with fern fronds entwined around it, Lena found herself in a precarious position. The ladder wobbled precariously beneath her as she stretched, screwdriver in hand, trying to align the final screw. A gust of wind chose that precise moment to swoop in from the sea, making the sign swing wildly, and Lena yelped, losing her footing. Strong hands caught the base of the ladder, steadying it with unexpected force. "Careful there," a deep voice rumbled from below. "Looks like that sign has a mind of its own." Lena, heart pounding, clutched the ladder's rungs and looked down. A man stood below, holding the ladder with an easy strength that made her feel instantly secure. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of time spent outdoors. His hair, a dark, rich brown, was tousled by the wind, and his eyes, a piercing shade of gray-blue, held a glint of amusement. He wore a simple, faded work shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms dusted with sawdust. Oh, thank you," she managed, her voice a little breathless. It's trickier than it looks." He stepped back, his gaze sweeping over the shop, then settling on the sign. Those old iron brackets can be a menace. Want a hand with it?" Lena hesitated for a moment, then a smile touched her lips. "I wouldn't say no. I think I'm more likely to fall than get it properly secured." He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "I'm Reese. Reese Pendleton. I've got a workshop down by the harbor. Heard you were opening a bookshop. Lena Hayes, she replied, feeling a blush creep up her neck. Yes, Fable and Fern, it's almost ready. She descended the ladder, feeling a little less clumsy now that she was on solid ground, and not teetering on a rung. It's good to meet you, Reese. I swear, this sign has been taunting me all morning. Reese took the screwdriver from her, his fingers brushing hers, a spark of unexpected warmth shooting through her. He examined the sign and its brackets with a professional eye. Needs a little leverage, and a couple of new screws by the looks of it. These are rusted through. He glanced at her. Got any spares? Probably, she said, gesturing vaguely inside the shop. Somewhere in the chaos. I can look. Don't trouble yourself, he said, already heading towards a battered old pickup truck parked a few feet away. I've got a whole assortment in my truck. Be right back. He returned moments later with a small toolkit and a handful of sturdy new screws. With practiced ease, he climbed the ladder. Lena watched him, fascinated by the quiet efficiency of his movements. He didn't rush, but each action was precise and deliberate. His hands, she noticed, were strong and calloused, but moved with a surprising dexterity as he removed the old, rusted screws and carefully aligned the sign. There, he said a few minutes later, stepping back onto the ground. The sign hung perfectly straight, gleaming softly in the afternoon sun. Should hold firm now, even in a gale. Thank you, Reese, Lena said, genuinely grateful. You're a lifesaver. I was about to give up and just prop it against the wall. He offered a small smile, a flash of warmth in his gray-blue eyes. No problem at all. Glad to help a new neighbor. He looked at the sign again, a thoughtful expression on his face. Fable and Fern. I like that. A good name for a bookshop. I hope so, she said, feeling a surge of pride. I wanted something that felt a little magical, a little rooted in nature. It suits. He nodded. Then his gaze drifted to the shop window, where a few shelves were already filled, tempting glimpses of colorful spines visible from the street. I might have to come in and browse once you're open. Haven't had a proper bookshop here in, well, a long time. You'd be very welcome, she replied, her heart fluttering a little at the prospect. I'm planning to open next Saturday. Good to know, he said. And for a moment, their eyes met, holding. There was an unspoken understanding that passed between them, a quiet recognition, almost like a whispered promise. Then, as if breaking a spell, he shifted, picking up his toolkit. Well, I'd best be getting back. Got a boat to finish by end of week. Right. And thank you again, Reese, Lena said, watching him walk back to his truck. He moved with a relaxed grace, a natural part of the landscape. As he drove away, a faint scent of wood smoke and sea salt lingered in the air, a subtle memory of his presence. Lena spent the rest of the day feeling a quiet hum of contentment. The sign was up, the shop was almost ready, and she'd had her first genuine conversation with a local, who wasn't Mrs. Gable or Finn. Reese Pendleton. His name tasted solid and real on her tongue. The next few days were a blur of final preparations. She arranged the books by genre, then by a more intuitive, whimsical system, stories for rainy afternoons, journeys of the heart, mysteries by the sea. She placed comfortable armchairs in cozy corners, added a small round table with a chessboard, and filled a vase with wildflowers she'd gathered from the cliff path. The stubborn window latch after Reese's intervention now opened and closed with a satisfying click, letting in the fresh sea air. On Friday evening, the night before the grand opening, Lena found herself standing in the middle of her completed shop, a mug of herbal tea warming her hands. The soft glow of strategically placed lamps illuminated the shelves, casting inviting shadows. It was perfect. A little haven, just as she'd imagined. A gentle tap on the window startled her. It was Reese. He stood outside, a brown paper bag in one hand, a small potted fern in the other. He gestured towards the door. Lena hurried to unlock it, a smile spreading across her face. Reese, what a surprise. Evening, Lena, he said, stepping inside. His gaze swept around the shop, a look of genuine appreciation in his eyes. It looks lovely, very inviting. Thank you, she said, feeling a flush of pleasure. Come in, come in. He offered her the fern. A little something for Fable and Fern. Figured it was fitting. Oh, Reese, it's beautiful, Lena exclaimed, taking the pot. The fern was vibrant green, its fronds delicate and intricate. Thank you, it's perfect. And this, he added, holding out the paper bag. Mrs. Gable said you might be too busy to cook tonight. Her famous steak pasties. Lena laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. She's right. I absolutely am. This is incredibly thoughtful, Rice. Really? Just neighborly, he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He paused, looking around again. You've done a remarkable job. This place, it has a good feeling to it. That's what I was hoping for, she admitted, placing the fern on her counter, already imagining where it would go. A place where people can feel at home, find a story, or just sit quietly. Quiet is good, he murmured, his gaze lingering on the armchair by the window, where a thick volume of poetry lay open. Sometimes, the quietest stories are the best ones. Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest. I agree. There's a lot to be said for the unsaid, isn't there? He nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. More than most people realize. He shifted his weight. Well, I just wanted to wish you luck for tomorrow. I'll try to stop by. I'd like that very much, she said, meeting his gaze. The unspoken current between them was palpable, a gentle hum in the quiet shop. It was more than just neighborly kindness. It felt like the delicate beginning of something else, something hopeful and rare. After Reese left, Lena found herself humming as she ate the delicious pasty, the fern, sitting proudly on her counter. She placed it near the window where it would catch the morning light. The thought of him coming back tomorrow, of seeing his quiet strength in her shop, made her heart feel lighter than it had in years. Seabrook Cove was proving to be everything she'd hoped for, and perhaps even a little more. The next morning, the air was crisp and clear, the sea a brilliant sapphire under a cloudless sky. Lena woke early, a nervous energy buzzing beneath her skin. She dressed in a soft, flowing dress the color of seafoam, and after a quick breakfast, she unlocked the doors of Fable and Fern. The first few hours were slow, a gentle trickle of curious onlookers. Mrs. Gable popped in with another plate of scones and a bouquet of wildflowers, her smile as bright as the morning sun. Finn, the paper boy, lingered a moment, admiring the children's section before dashing off. A few tourists, drawn by the new sign, browsed cautiously. Then, around lunchtime, the shop began to fill. Word had clearly spread. Locals, many of whom Lena hadn't met yet, came in, their faces alight with interest. They admired the carefully chosen books, chatted amongst themselves, and offered Lena their congratulations. The shop, which had been so quiet and still just hours before, now hummed with the gentle murmur of voices, the rustle of turning pages, and the soft clink of teacups. Lena was busy helping customers, answering questions and wrapping books, a joyful exhaustion settling over her. She loved the feeling of connecting people with stories, of seeing their faces light up when they found just the right book. In the midst of the bustling activity, she caught sight of him. Reese stood near the back, by the section dedicated to local history and folklore. He wasn't browsing actively, but rather observing, a quiet smile playing on his lips as he watched the scene unfold. He looked comfortable, at ease, a natural part of the warmth that filled the room. When she finally had a moment, she walked over to him, a smile on her face. Reese, I'm so glad you could make it. He turned, his gray-blue eyes warm. Wouldn't have missed it. It's a wonderful success, Lena. You must be very proud. I am, she admitted, her gaze sweeping over her shop, her heart full. It's a little overwhelming, but in the best possible way. You deserve it, he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper amidst the general hum of conversation. He picked up a slim volume from the shelf, its cover depicting an old map of Cornwall. I was just looking at this. My grandfather used to tell me stories about the old smuggling tunnels beneath the cliffs. Oh, really? Lena's interest was piqued. This book mentions a few local legends. I tried to find some more detailed accounts, but they're hard to come by. Most of those stories are passed down, not written down, he explained, his gaze distant for a moment, as if recalling memories. Whispered from one generation to the next. My family's been here for centuries. We know a few of them. Lena's heart gave a little leap. That's amazing. I would love to hear some of them if you ever felt like sharing. He looked at her then, a slow smile spreading across his face. Perhaps, if you've got a quiet moment sometime, I could tell you a few. I think I could make time for that, she replied, her own smile mirroring his. The promise hung in the air between them, a delicate thread of anticipation. It felt like the beginning of a truly good story, one that would unfold slowly, gently, like the turning pages of a beloved book. The sounds of the shop faded into a comforting background hum, and all she could hear was the quiet echo of his whispered offer, a promise of shared secrets and untold tales, waiting just for them. When would you like to hear them? Elara asked, her voice softer than usual, a lightness bubbling within her. The question felt momentous, like turning the first page of a particularly anticipated novel. Liam's eyes crinkled at the corners. Whenever you're free. I'm often here after closing, tidying up, or just enjoying the quiet. It's a different kind of magic when the day's hustle fades. He paused, looking around the bustling shop as if seeing its quieter self. Perhaps one evening this week? Or a quiet afternoon when the customers thin out? Elara considered. Her own days were usually packed, but the thought of these stories, whispered in the hushed embrace of the bookstore, was suddenly more compelling than any other plan. Evenings might be best, she decided. Perhaps Wednesday, after the last stragglers have left. I could stay a little later. Wednesday evening it is, Liam confirmed, his smile widening, a genuine warmth radiating from him. Around 7 then, I'll put the kettle on. The simple promise of tea and stories settled over Elara like a comforting blanket. She felt a tingle of excitement she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just the stories, she realized, but the quiet invitation into Liam's world, the gentle offer of shared time and attention. As she left the bookstore that day, the scent of old paper and roasted coffee seemed to cling to her, a sweet reminder of the exchange. The next few days passed in a haze of anticipation. Elara found herself glancing at the clock more often, her mind drifting to Liam, wondering what tales he might weave. She even bought a new, particularly soft scarf, thinking it would be perfect for a cozy evening of listening. Wednesday arrived, draped in a gentle, persistent drizzle that only enhanced the promise of indoor warmth. Elara finished her errands and headed back to the bookstore a little before 7, her heart doing a quiet flutter against her ribs. The close sign was already flipped, but a soft glow emanated from within. She knocked gently, and Liam appeared, pushing the door open just enough for her to slip inside. The shop was transformed. The usual daytime clamor was replaced by a profound silence, broken only by the soft hum of the old refrigerator in the back and the gentle drip of rain against the window panes. A low lamp cast a warm golden pool of light over a small, worn armchair tucked away near a shelf of classic literature, and another, more upright chair was pulled close. On a small table between them, a steaming teapot sat beside 2 mismatched ceramic mugs. "Welcome," Liam said, his voice hushed, as if not to disturb the sleeping books. He gestured to the armchair. "Make yourself comfortable." Elara sank into the plush cushions, feeling instantly at ease. The air smelled of tea and old paper, and something else, something faintly woody and comforting, perhaps from the polished shelves. Liam poured the tea, a fragrant jasmine blend, and handed her a mug. Their fingers brushed, a brief electric spark that made Elara's breath catch. "So," she began, cradling the warm mug. "The stories?" Liam smiled, taking a sip of his own tea. "Yes, the stories." He leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. "I suppose the first one should be about beginnings, shouldn't it? About how I first fell in love with them." Elara nodded, her eyes wide, ready to listen. "I grew up in a house overflowing with books," Liam began, his voice a low, melodic murmur that seemed perfectly suited to the quiet intimacy of the moment. "My grandmother was a librarian, and my grandfather a retired English teacher. Our walls weren't just walls, they were fortifications of stories. But I wasn't a natural reader, not at first. I was a rambunctious boy, more interested in climbing trees and chasing squirrels than sitting still." He chuckled softly, a warm sound in the quiet shop. "My grandmother, she was a wise woman. She never forced books on me, Instead, she'd wait until I was worn out from my outdoor adventures, muddy-kneed and sleepy-eyed. Then, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the living room, she'd call me to her armchair. She wouldn't read détend me, not exactly. She'd just open a book, any book, and start telling me the story for me. But in her own words, she'd embellish, she'd characters with different facts. Elara could almost picture it. A small boy, captivated, the grandmother's gentle voice weaving magic in the twilight. She had a particular knack for tales of adventure, Liam continued, his eyes sparkling with a faraway memory. Knights and dragons, pirates and hidden treasures. But my favorite were always the stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, a baker who saved his village with a secret recipe, a seamstress who stitched hope into every garment. She'd make me close my eyes and imagine the scenes, feel the wind in my hair, smell the sea salt, taste the warm bread. He paused, taking another sip of tea. She taught me that stories weren't just words on a page. They were worlds, they were feelings, they were connections. And they were everywhere, if you just knew how to look and how to listen. That's why I love this place, Elara. It's not just a shop, it's a treasury of worlds waiting to be discovered, waiting to be retold. Elara sat in silence for a moment, absorbing his words, a profound sense of warmth spreading through her chest. It wasn't a grand revelation, but it was deeply personal, a window into the core of who Liam was. She saw the boy in the man, the quiet reverence for stories, the gentle spirit. Your grandmother sounds wonderful, Elara finally said, her voice a little thick with emotion. Liam's smile was soft. She was. She taught me that the best stories aren't always the loudest ones. Sometimes they're the quiet whispers, the ones shared between two people like this. He gestured between them. The rain outside intensified slightly, a soothing rhythm against the windows. Elara felt a peculiar sense of homecoming, as if she had been searching for this very moment, this particular kind of quiet intimacy, without even knowing it. She realized she was smiling, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes. Thank you for sharing that, she said, her gaze meeting his. There was a deeper understanding now, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that was starting to form between them, woven from shared tea and whispered memories. They talked for a little longer that night, about books, about the magic of imagination, about the simple pleasure of a rainy evening indoors. By the time Elara left, the rain had stopped and the stars were beginning to peek through the clouds. She walked home with a light step, her heart full, already looking forward to their next story. Wisey. The story sessions became a regular ritual. Every Wednesday evening, Elara would return to the written word, finding Liam waiting amidst the hushed shelves, a different pot of tea brewing, a new story ready to unfold. Each tale was a carefully chosen thread, weaving a richer tapestry of his life, his thoughts, his quiet observations of the world. He told her about the summer he spent volunteering at an animal shelter, a heartwarming anecdote about a grumpy old cat named Bartholomew who only allowed Liam to pet him. He spoke of a backpacking trip through the Scottish Highlands, painting vivid pictures of mist-shrouded lochs and ancient stone circles, his voice imbued with the wonder of discovery. There was the humorous account of his first disastrous attempt at baking bread, which resulted in a rock-hard loaf and a smoke-filled kitchen. Through these stories, Elara learned of Liam's unwavering kindness, his quiet resilience, his gentle humor. She saw his patience, his curiosity, and a deep well of empathy that shone through his eyes when he spoke of others. He wasn't just telling stories, he was sharing his soul, piece by carefully chosen piece. And as he shared, Elara found herself opening up in turn. It wasn't always a grand tale she offered, but sometimes a small anecdote that one of his stories would trigger. She spoke of her grandmother's garden, a riot of color and scent that was her favorite childhood sanctuary. She recounted the time she got lost in a sprawling labyrinth of bookshelves at a university library, feeling both panic and exhilaration. She even shared a quiet dream of one day owning a small cabin by a lake, where she could read and write to her heart's content. Liam listened with the same focused attention he gave to his own storytelling. He asked thoughtful questions, prompting her to elaborate, making her feel truly heard, truly seen. It was a sensation Elara hadn't realized she was missing until now. In the quiet glow of the bookstore, surrounded by the silent company of countless literary adventures, their own story was gently unfurling. One evening, Liam's story was a little different. It wasn't a lighthearted anecdote, but something more reflective, tinged with a quiet melancholy. There was a time, he began, stirring his tea, his gaze fixed on the swirling leaves, when I almost gave up on stories entirely, not reading them but believing in them, in the magic they promised. Elara leaned forward, her heart aching for the younger Liam she was only just getting to know. I had a dream? Fresh out of university, he continued, his voice a little softer. To open a bookshop, much like this one, but perhaps a bit grander, with a small coffee shop inside, and a space for local artists to display their work. I spent years planning, saving, researching. I found the perfect location, even started talking to a bank. He sighed, a soft sound that barely disturbed the quiet. But life happened. A family emergency, a sudden need for funds. Things just spiraled. I lost the location. The savings were depleted, and the dream felt like it had been snatched away, replaced by a bitter emptiness. He looked up then, meeting Elara's gaze, a flicker of that past pain visible in his eyes. For a while I couldn't even step into a bookstore without feeling a pang of disappointment, a reminder of what I'd lost. The stories within felt mocking, full of happy endings I wouldn't get. Elara felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to offer comfort, but she held back, letting him finish. It was my grandmother again, Liam said, a faint smile touching his lips. She told me that even the greatest epics have their dark chapters, their moments of despair. But those moments aren't the end of the story, Elara. They're just the turning point. She said true stories aren't about avoiding the hard parts, but about finding the courage to keep turning the pages, even when they're stuck together with tears. He looked around the familiar shelves, a serene expression settling on his face. She helped me see that even though a thought dream didn't come true, it didn't mean there wouldn't be Gano dream. And eventually, years later, this place came up for sale, smaller, quieter, but full of its own unique charm. Elara felt a lump form in her throat. His vulnerability, gently offered in the soft glow of the lamplight, touched her deeply. It wasn't just a story. It was a testament to resilience, to hope, to the quiet strength she had sensed in him from the beginning. That's a beautiful story, Liam, she managed to say, her voice thick. And I'm so glad you found this one. She gestured around the shop. It feels like it was always meant to be yours. Their eyes met, and in that shared glance, Elara felt a profound sense of connection, a silent understanding that transcended words. It wasn't just comfort she felt for him, but a quiet admiration, a blossoming affection that had taken root in the fertile ground of their shared evenings. And as weeks turned into a month, their Wednesday evening ritual deepened into something more profound. It wasn't just about stories anymore. It was about companionship, about the comfortable silence that settled between them, punctuated by shared laughter or a thoughtful sigh. Elara found herself eagerly anticipating Wednesdays but also finding excuses to drop by the bookstore on other days, just for a brief chat, a shared cup of coffee, or a quick recommendation. Their interactions weren't confined to the shop either. One sunny Saturday, Liam mentioned a small independent film playing at the local cinema, and Elara, to her own surprise, found herself agreeing to go with him. It wasn't a formal date, not explicitly, but walking beside him, sharing popcorn, and discussing the film afterwards, felt deliciously close to one. Then there was the afternoon they spent wandering through the local farmer's market, the air alive with the scent of fresh produce and blooming flowers. Liam, it turned out, was an excellent cook, and he pointed out exotic spices and heirloom vegetables with an infectious enthusiasm. Elara found herself laughing more easily, her usual quiet reserve melting away in his presence. She realized she felt lighter, brighter, simply by being near him. One particularly blustery autumn afternoon, Elara was browsing a new arrival of poetry collections when Liam approached her, a thoughtful expression on his face. Elara, he began, I've been thinking about something you said a while ago, about wanting to write. Elara felt a blush creep up her neck. She'd mentioned it almost in passing, a quiet aspiration she rarely voiced aloud. Oh yes, she said, a little defensively. Just small things, musings really. Nothing serious. Liam shook his head gently. Don't dismiss it so easily. I think it's wonderful. And I was wondering, there's an old writing desk in the back room, tucked away. It belonged to the previous owner, a lovely woman who wrote children's stories. It's a beautiful piece, but it's just collecting dust. I was thinking, if you ever wanted a quiet space, away from your own apartment, to just sit and write, it's there. Elara stared at him, her heart doing a strange little leap. The offer was so unexpected, so thoughtful, so William. It wasn't just a desk. It was an invitation, an affirmation of a dream she'd kept largely to herself. It was him saying, I see you. I believe in you. Well, Liam, she whispered, genuinely touched. That's incredibly kind. Are you sure? He smiled. That gentle, crinkling smile that always made her feel warm. Quite sure. I'd love for it to be used again. And who knows, he added, a twinkle in his eye, maybe you'll discover a story hidden in its drawers waiting for you. That evening, after their usual tea and stories, this time, Liam recounted a whimsical tale about a mischievous raven who lived in his childhood garden. He led her to the back room. Tucked away in a quiet corner, bathed in the soft glow of a small window, was a beautifully crafted wooden desk, its surface worn smooth by years of use. A comfortable chair sat before it, and a small empty inkwell gleamed beside a leather-bound blotter. Elara ran her hand over the polished wood, feeling a tangible connection to the unknown writer who had sat here before her. The space felt sacred, full of unspoken stories. It's perfect, she breathed, turning to Liam, her eyes shining. Absolutely perfect. He stood beside her, a comfortable presence. I thought you might like it. There was a moment of silence then, a pause laden with unspoken emotions. The air between them hummed with a quiet intensity. Elara looked at Liam, truly looked at him, and saw not just a charming bookseller, but a man of profound kindness, quiet strength, and a gentle spirit that had steadily, lovingly woven itself into the fabric of her life. She realized with a sudden breathtaking clarity that she was falling in love with him. The thought didn't alarm her. Instead, it felt like coming home. It felt right, natural, as inevitable as the turning of a page. Liam, as if sensing the shift in her emotions, reached out, his hand gently covering hers where it rested on the desk. His touch was warm, comforting, and sent a shiver of pure delight through her. Elara, he said, his voice a low murmur, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. These stories, they've become very important to me. Her gaze met his, and she saw the same depth of feeling mirrored in his warm brown eyes. Me too, Liam, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. More than you know. He leaned in slightly, his gaze dropping to her lips for a fleeting moment before returning to her eyes. The unspoken question hung in the air, a delicate, thrilling invitation. I think, he said, his voice even softer now, it might be time for us to start a new kind of story, one that we write together, perhaps chapter by chapter. Elara's heart pounded a joyful rhythm against her ribs. She didn't need to think, didn't need to analyze. All she knew was the warmth of his hand, the sincerity in his eyes, and the overwhelming feeling of rightness that enveloped her. She squeezed his hand gently. I think I'd like that very much, Liam, she replied, her voice imbued with all the hope and affection that bloomed in her heart. I think that would be the best story of all. A soft, tender smile spread across Liam's face, and he squeezed her hand back, a silent promise. The old desk, the quiet room, the countless books around them, they all seemed to hold their breath, witnessing the beginning of a truly special tale, one that was just starting to find its words, waiting for the chapters yet to be written. The night stretched out before them, full of quiet possibilities, and Elara felt a deep, profound sense of peace, knowing that her own story had just taken the most beautiful turn. He spread across Liam's face, and he squeezed her hand back, a silent promise. The old desk, the quiet room, the countless books around them, they all seemed to hold their breath, witnessing the beginning of a truly special tale, one that was just starting to find its words, waiting for the chapters yet to be written. The night stretched out before them, full of quiet possibilities, and Elara felt a deep, profound sense of peace, knowing that her own story had just taken the most beautiful turn. Elara's heart fluttered like a trapped bird, but not in fear, in exhilaration. The air between them, once merely comfortable, now thrummed with unspoken potential. Liam's thumb brushed lightly over the back of her hand, a feather-light touch that sent warmth spreading through her veins. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and saw not just kindness, but a nascent spark, a gentle curiosity that mirrored her own. "It's getting late," Liam said, his voice a low murmur, breaking the silence but not the spell. He didn't release her hand, merely shifted his grip slightly, intertwining their fingers more fully. "I know," Alara whispered back, not wanting the moment to end. "But I don't want to leave." A soft chuckle escaped Liam. "I wouldn't want you to, but the library will be closed soon, and I do have to lock up." "Oh, right," she said, a blush creeping up her neck. She'd been so lost in the moment, she'd forgotten the practicalities. Yet, the way he held her hand, the lingering gaze, told her he wasn't eager for her to go either. He finally released her hand, a slow, reluctant motion that felt like a caress in itself. The sudden absence of his touch left a cool void. He stood, extending a hand to her, and she took it, allowing him to pull her gently to her feet. Their fingers lingered for another beat before separating. "Thank you for showing me all this," Alara said, gesturing vaguely at the shelves around them. "It's magical." Liam smiled. "It always has been for me too. I'm glad I could share it with someone who appreciates it." His gaze held hers for a long moment, a question in its depths. Would you like to appreciate it again? Maybe tomorrow? I'll be at the bookstore." "I'd love that," Alara replied, her voice soft but firm. "What time?" "Any time," he said, the quiet warmth in his eyes unmistakable. "I'm there all day, just come find me." As they walked out of the hushed library, the cool night air was a welcome contrast to the warmth that still bloomed in Alara's chest. Liam walked her to the corner where she'd parked her car. The streetlights cast long shadows, but the glow around them felt bright and hopeful. "Good night, Alara," he said, stopping by her car door. "Good night, Liam," she responded, turning to face him. The words felt too small for the enormity of the feelings swirling inside her. She wanted to say more, to reach out, but hesitated. Liam, sensing her unspoken thoughts, took a small step closer. He reached out, not for her hand this time, but gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, sending a shiver down her spine. His eyes searched hers, then he leaned in, pressing a soft, chaste kiss to her forehead. "Until tomorrow," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. Alara's heart swelled. "Until tomorrow," she repeated, a smile blossoming on her face. She watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing into the shadows before finally getting into her car. The drive home was a blur. Her mind replayed every word, every glance, every touch. She felt buoyant, light, as if she could float. She had walked into that library feeling lost and uncertain, and walked out feeling like the protagonist of her very own, unfolding story. The next morning, Alara woke with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The sun streamed through her window, banishing the usual morning gloom. She dressed with unusual care, choosing a soft, flowing dress the color of spring leaves, something that felt hopeful and fresh. She even hummed a little tune as she made herself a quick breakfast, a stark contrast to her usual silent, introspective mornings. She spent a few hours at her own desk, attempting to write, but her mind kept drifting to Liam. The words on the page felt flat, uninspired, compared to the vibrant story taking shape in her heart. She smiled, realizing it was a good problem to have. Finally, unable to concentrate, she decided to head to the bookstore. Liam's bookstore, the bound page, was exactly as she'd imagined, cozy, slightly cluttered in the best possible way, and imbued with the rich scent of old paper and leather. Soft jazz played quietly from hidden speakers. Liam was behind the counter, absorbed in a large, leather-bound volume, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up as the bell above the door chimed, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Alara," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "You came." "You said to," she replied, a shy smile gracing her lips. "And I couldn't stay away." He chuckled, closing the book and setting it aside. "I'm glad. Welcome to my little world." He gestured around the store. "It's not quite as grand as the municipal library, but it has its own charms." "It's wonderful," she said, genuinely admiring the atmosphere. It feels lived in. Loved. It is, Liam confirmed, his gaze sweeping over the shelves with an owner's pride. Every book here has a story, not just between its covers, but how it found its way here, how it's been cherished. He leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. So, what brings you to the bound page today? Browsing, or perhaps seeking inspiration? Elara felt a blush creep up her cheeks. A bit of both, I suppose. I tried to write this morning, but my mind kept wandering. She gestured vaguely. To new possibilities. Liam's eyes twinkled. I understand completely. Sometimes the best stories are the ones unfolding around us, or within us, rather than on the page. He paused, then pushed off the counter. Let me show you some of my favorites. Perhaps they'll spark something. He led her through the labyrinthine aisles, his movements fluid and confident. He pulled out a slim volume of poetry, his fingers tracing the gilded title. This is one of my cherished possessions. A first edition, signed by the poet. It speaks of quiet strength, of finding beauty in the mundane. He handed it to her, his fingers brushing hers. You have a similar spirit, I think. Elara's breath hitched. No one had ever described her that way. She opened the book, her eyes scanning the elegant script. The words felt like a gentle embrace. It's beautiful, Liam. Thank you. He then showed her a collection of forgotten fairy tales, their pages yellowed with age, filled with intricate illustrations. These remind me that magic isn't just for children. It's in the rediscovery, the wonder of seeing something old anew. He watched her carefully, gauging her reaction. They spent the better part of an hour wandering, Liam sharing anecdotes about authors, revealing hidden gems, and Elara listening intently, captivated not just by the books, but by the quiet passion in his voice. She found herself opening up, sharing her own struggles with her current manuscript, the feeling of being stuck, of losing her narrative thread. Sometimes, Liam said as they stood in a sunlit corner, surrounded by classics, the story isn't lost, Elara. It's just waiting for a new perspective, a new character to enter the scene and change everything. His gaze was direct, meaningful. Elara felt a warmth spread through her, a comfort that went beyond mere understanding. He wasn't just talking about her book. He was talking about them. They sat down at a small round table tucked away in a reading nook, sipping tea Liam had brewed in a quaint ceramic pot. The gentle clinking of cups, the rustle of turning pages from a lone customer in another aisle, created a peaceful ambience. Tell me more about your story, Liam prompted, leaning forward slightly, his elbows on the table. What's it about? Or, what was it supposed to be about? Elara hesitated, then took a deep breath. It's a historical romance, set in a small English village in the late 19th century. My protagonist, Eleanor, is a quiet, bookish woman who dreams of being a cartographer, which was quite scandalous for a woman back then. She's stifled by societal expectations, by her family's desire for her to marry well. And then a traveling scholar comes to town, a man who sees her intellect, who encourages her dreams. She paused, a small, sad smile playing on her lips. But then I got stuck. I felt like I was just repeating tropes, that Eleanor wasn't really coming alive. I couldn't find her true voice, or the depth of their connection. Liam listened patiently, his eyes never leaving hers. And what changed? What made you feel stuck? I think, Elara confessed, I hadn't truly understood what it meant for Eleanor to find someone who saw her. I was writing about the idea of it, but not the feeling. Not the profound relief, the exhilarating freedom of being truly known. She met his gaze, a vulnerability in her eyes. Until recently. A slow smile spread across Liam's face. I think you found your inspiration then, Elara. Perhaps Eleanor's story isn't stagnant. Perhaps it's just been waiting for you to experience what she needs to. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. His touch was gentle, reassuring. Don't be afraid to let your own experiences inform your art. It's where the truest stories come from. His words were a balm to her soul, a permission she hadn't realized she desperately needed. She squeezed his hand, her heart overflowing with gratitude. Thank you, Liam. That means more than you know. They talked for hours, the afternoon sun tracing patterns on the polished wooden floor. Liam shared stories of his own journey with the bookstore, how it had been his grandmother's, a legacy he cherished and fought to maintain in an increasingly digital world. He spoke of his love for the tangible quality of books, the smell of paper, the feel of a worn cover. He wasn't just a bookseller, he was a guardian of stories, a curator of knowledge and dreams. Elara felt a deep connection to his reverence for the written word, a shared passion that transcended mere hobby. It felt like finding a kindred spirit, a missing piece she hadn't known she was searching for. As evening approached, a gentle rain began to tap against the window panes. The soft glow of the lamps in the bookstore created an even cozier atmosphere. Liam suggested they close up shop and grab some dinner. "There's a lovely little Italian place down the street," he offered. "Their pasta is legendary." Elara's stomach rumbled in agreement. "Sounds perfect." Closing the bookstore felt like a ritual. Liam carefully straightened a few displays, dimmed some lights, and then, with a final glance around, locked the heavy oak door. They walked side by side under a shared umbrella, the rhythm of the rain a soothing backdrop to their easy conversation. The restaurant was small and intimate, with checkered tablecloths and the comforting aroma of garlic and herbs. They settled into a quiet booth, and Elara found herself feeling completely at ease, as if she'd known Liam for years. The conversation flowed effortlessly, from books to travel, from childhood memories to future aspirations. Liam spoke of his quiet dream to perhaps one day establish a small publishing house, focusing on reprinting forgotten classics and debut authors who wrote with heart. "It's a long shot," he admitted, "but the idea of giving new life to beautiful words, of helping new voices find their way, it's something I've always dreamed of." Elara's eyes shone with admiration. "That's a wonderful dream, Liam, truly, and I have no doubt you could make it happen. You have such an intuitive understanding of stories, of what makes them special." He looked at her, a gentle warmth in his gaze. "Perhaps we could even publish one of your books one day." Her cheeks flushed. "Maybe," she whispered, a thrill running through her at the thought. The idea, once a distant, terrifying ambition, now felt a little less daunting, a little more possible, with Liam's quiet encouragement. As the evening deepened and the rain outside softened to a gentle drizzle, Elara felt a profound sense of contentment. Liam was attentive, funny, and deeply thoughtful. He listened with genuine interest, remembered small details she'd mentioned, and offered insights that surprised and delighted her. He wasn't overtly demonstrative, but his steady presence, his warm gaze, and the subtle ways he showed he cared, an extra napkin, refilling her water glass, a hand on her arm when they navigated a crowded street, spoke volumes. After dinner, Liam insisted on walking her back to her car, which she had left parked near the bookstore. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement gleaming under the streetlights. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming night jasmine. "I had a truly wonderful day, Liam," Elara said, stopping by her car. "Thank you for everything." "The pleasure was all mine, Elara," he replied, his voice soft. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her elbow. "I really enjoyed getting to know you better, and hearing about Eleanor." He smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile. "I have a feeling her story is about to take a very exciting turn." Elara laughed softly, her gaze meeting his. "I think so too." The unspoken understanding between them was palpable, a silent promise hanging in the air. This time when he leaned in, it wasn't just her forehead. His lips brushed hers, a feather-light touch, tentative and sweet. It was brief, chaste, but it sent a cascade of warmth through Elara, like sunlight after a long winter. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the soft press of his lips, the gentle electricity that sparked between them. When he pulled back, his eyes were soft, questioning. "Good night, Elara," he murmured. "Good night, Liam," she breathed, her voice a little shaky. She watched him walk away, her hand instinctively rising to her lips. The kiss was a whisper, a suggestion, a gentle turning of a new page. It left her wanting more, in the most beautiful, hopeful way. The next few weeks unfolded like the chapters of a beloved book. Their days were filled with quiet moments and shared discoveries. Elara found herself drawn to the bound page almost daily. Sometimes she would sit in the reading nook, lost in a book Liam had recommended, occasionally looking up to catch his eye across the store, a silent smile passing between them. Other times, She'd help him alphabetize a new shipment or organize a dusty shelf of first editions, their hands brushing as they worked side by side, the air charged with unspoken affection. Their conversations deepened, traversing myriad subjects, from philosophy to funny anecdotes about eccentric customers. Elara found herself confiding in Liam about her fears as a writer, the pressure to produce something meaningful, the moments of self-doubt that often plagued her. Liam, in turn, shared the challenges of keeping an independent bookstore afloat, the financial worries, the struggle to compete with online giants, but always concluding with the unwavering belief in the enduring power of physical books. One rainy afternoon, as they sat in the reading nook, a stack of old maps spread between them, Elara felt a surge of inspiration for Eleanor's story. "Liam," she began, tracing a finger over a faded coastline. "What if Eleanor's cartography wasn't just about making maps of known places, but about mapping the unknown? About charting her own course, literally and figuratively, in a world that wants to define her?" Liam's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant, Elara. It gives her quest so much more depth. It's not just about drawing lines on paper, it's about defining her own boundaries, her own freedom. And her scholar, he wouldn't just encourage her, he would be her fellow explorer, charting new emotional territories with her." Elara's heart swelled. He understood. He truly understood the core of her story, and in doing so, he understood a core part of her. She found herself writing again with a renewed vigor she hadn't felt in years. Words flowed onto the page, vibrant and alive, inspired by the quiet strength she saw in Liam, the depth of his understanding, and the gentle way he encouraged her to find her own unexplored territories. Their dates were simple, but profound. Long walks through the botanical gardens, where Liam would identify obscure plants and tell her their stories, just as he did with books. Picnics by the river, sharing sandwiches and quiet laughter. Evenings spent cooking together in Elara's cozy kitchen, the scent of herbs and spices filling the air, their hands brushing as they reached for the same ingredient. Each moment felt like a carefully crafted scene in a beautiful novel, rich with detail and emotional resonance. One crisp autumn evening, after a particularly satisfying meal of homemade pasta, they were curled up on Elara's sofa, a soft blanket draped over them. Liam was reading aloud from a volume of poetry, his voice a soothing baritone, the words weaving a spell around them. Elara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling completely at peace. The rhythmic rise and fall of his chest beneath her cheek, the scent of old paper, and something uniquely Liam, filled her senses. He paused, lowering the book slightly. "Elara," he began, his voice softer than usual. "There's something I haven't really shared with anyone, not fully anyway." She straightened slightly, looking up at him, her heart giving a gentle lurch. She knew Liam was a private person and this felt significant. "You can tell me anything, Liam," she said, her voice quiet but firm. He took a deep breath. "My grandmother. She wasn't just a bookseller. She was a writer too, in her youth. She had this incredible collection of stories, poems, even a half-finished novel. She never published anything. Said the world wasn't ready for a woman like her or her stories. When she passed, and I inherited the store, I found all her manuscripts hidden away. They're beautiful, Elara, full of life and wisdom and a quiet defiance." He paused, a wistful look in his eyes. "My dream of a small publishing house. It started with her. I want to bring her words to life, to let her stories finally be heard." Elara's eyes welled up with tears, not of sadness, but of profound understanding and admiration. "Oh, Liam," she whispered, reaching up to cup his cheek. That's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Your grandmother would be so proud of you, and I have no doubt her stories deserve to be read." He leaned into her touch, his gaze warm and vulnerable. "It's a big undertaking, and sometimes I feel overwhelmed, like I'm not enough to honor her legacy." "You are more than enough," Elara said, her voice fierce with conviction. "You embody her legacy. You're keeping her love for stories alive, and you're carrying her torch forward, and you won't be doing it alone." She squeezed his hand, intertwining their fingers. "I'll help you, Liam, any way I can. We'll bring her stories to the world, together." A slow, radiant smile spread across Liam's face, a smile that reached his eyes and filled them with a profound gratitude. "Elara," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. He leaned down, and this time, his kiss was deeper, more assured, a tender promise of shared dreams and an unbreakable bond. It tasted of hope and the sweet promise of a future they were building, word by word, story by story. The next morning, Alara found herself at her desk, not just writing Eleanor's story, but sketching out ideas for Liam's grandmother's work. She started outlining a proposal for the publishing house, researching small presses, feeling a surge of energy and purpose she hadn't experienced in years. The quiet room, once a solitary space, now felt imbued with a shared purpose. Liam arrived later that morning, bearing a thermos of steaming coffee and a freshly baked scone. He found her surrounded by notes and open books, a focused intensity in her gaze. "Morning, my intrepid cartographer," he greeted softly, setting the coffee down. Alara looked up, a bright smile blooming on her face. "Morning, my guardian of stories. Look what I've been up to." She gestured excitedly at her work. "I've started thinking about how we could approach your grandmother's manuscripts. We could start with a collection of her short stories, introduce her to the world slowly, and I found some interesting grants for literary preservation." Liam sat down beside her, his eyes shining with a mixture of awe and tenderness. He picked up one of her scribbled notes, reading it carefully. "Alara, this is incredible. You've thought of so much already." "We're a team, remember?" she said, nudging him playfully. "And besides, it's giving me so many ideas for Eleanor. She's not just mapping the world, she's mapping her a future. She's realizing that her dreams aren't just her own, but something she can share, something she can build with someone who believes in her." He took her hand, his thumb stroking the back of her fingers. "I believe in you, Lara, more than you know." Their days continued to blend, a beautiful tapestry woven with shared work, quiet companionship, and growing affection. They spent evenings poring over Liam's grandmother's faded manuscripts, Alara's literary eye helping Liam decipher faint script and organize the narratives. Liam, in turn, offered invaluable insights into the publishing process, the practicalities, and the art of bringing a book to market. It was a dance of their combined passions, a symphony of shared purpose. One afternoon, Liam closed the bookstore early. "I want to show you something," he said, his eyes sparkling with a familiar mischievous excitement. He drove them out of the city, along winding country roads, bordered by fields of goldenrod and late-blooming wildflowers. Alara watched the landscape unfold, a sense of anticipation bubbling within her. They pulled up to a small, charming cottage nestled among ancient oak trees, its stone walls covered in ivy, a wisp of smoke curling from its chimney. It looked like something out of a storybook. "This," Liam announced, turning to her with a wide smile, "was my grandmother's writing retreat. After my grandfather passed, she bought it. She said she needed a place where the stories could breathe. It's been empty for years, just waiting for the right moment, the right inspiration." Alara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Liam, it's beautiful." He led her inside. The cottage was small but perfectly formed, with a stone fireplace, exposed wooden beams, and large windows that looked out onto a wildflower meadow. In one corner, there was a sturdy wooden desk, a worn leather chair, and a bookshelf filled with books, many of them with handwritten annotations in the margins. "This was her desk," Liam said, his voice soft with reverence. "Where she wrote, where she dreamed." He turned to Alara, his gaze tender. "I've been thinking, this could be our bound-page publishing house, a place where we can nurture stories both old and new, and," he added, a playful glint in his eye, "it has the perfect writing room for an intrepid cartographer to chart her course." Alara's heart swelled, tears blurring her vision. This wasn't just an offer of a shared dream. It was an invitation into his deepest hopes, a tangible symbol of their future together. She walked over to the desk, running her hand over the smooth, aged wood. She could almost feel the presence of his grandmother, a kindred spirit, a woman who had dared to dream of stories in a world that wasn't ready for them. She turned back to Liam, her eyes shining. "Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's perfect, absolutely perfect." She launched herself into his arms, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. He held her just as fiercely, his chin resting on her head. "I want to build this with you, Alara," he murmured, his voice a low rumble against her ear. "A home for stories, and a home for us." Alara pulled back slightly, her gaze searching his. The quiet possibilities of that first night in the library had bloomed into a vibrant, tangible future. "Yes," she breathed, a profound sense of rightness settling over her. "Yes, Liam, a home for stories, and a home for us." They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the cottage, making plans, dreaming aloud. They envisioned renovating the small kitchen, building more bookshelves, turning the sunny attic into a dedicated writing space for Alara. The air buzzed with excitement and the gentle hum of shared purpose. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they sat on the small porch, watching the meadow shimmer in the fading light. Liam had brought a picnic basket, and they shared crusty bread, cheese, and a bottle of sparkling cider, their conversation flowing easily, filled with laughter and tender glances. "You know," Alara said, leaning her head on his shoulder, "I think Eleanor's story isn't just about finding someone who sees her. It's about finding someone who inspires her to see herself more clearly. Someone who helps her build the world she always dreamed of, instead of just mapping the one she's given." Liam tightened his arm around her. "And I think," he replied, his voice soft, "that you're doing exactly that, Alara. You're building your world, and I'm incredibly lucky to be a part of it." He turned his head, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. The evening deepened, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky. The cottage, once a quiet relic of the past, now felt alive with the promise of a shared future. Their story, once just starting to find its words, was now being written with every shared glance, every whispered dream, every loving touch. The chapters ahead were unwritten, but Alara knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that they would be filled with warmth, love, and the enduring magic of stories, both old and new. The quiet possibilities had indeed turned into a beautiful reality, and Alara felt a deep, profound sense of peace, knowing that her own story was unfolding into the most beautiful tale she could ever imagine. Liam, who had been watching her, reached out, his hand gently covering hers. His thumb traced lazy circles on her skin, a silent promise. "Our story," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that always sent a shiver of warmth through her. Alara leaned her head against his shoulder, the scent of old books, and something uniquely Liam filling her senses. The world outside their cozy reading nook faded away, leaving only the soft glow of the lamp and the steady beat of their hearts. She imagined years stretching before them, filled with laughter echoing through their home, quiet evenings spent reading side by side, and countless new stories to discover together. Their love wasn't a grand epic, but a tender, deeply woven tapestry, each thread a moment, a glance, a shared dream. It was a love that felt like coming home, a gentle whisper of forever. As Alara drifted closer to sleep, nestled against Liam, she knew this was just the beginning of their most cherished chapters, a tale of quiet, enduring happiness.